Today we're going to be looking at the first of two videos that will show you how to use the new Examiner product, the Sekonic scanning utility. This is designed to pretty much work with all the newer Sekonic scanners that are out there. And what we'll be looking at in this first utility is the production and editing of a new form. The form is sort of like a little piece of software. It's a little program that tells the scanner how to read the bubble sheet. What we are going to be doing is working with this bubble sheet right here as a definition. So this is one of the standard bubble sheets that you'll find around, and you'll notice that I've marked it up showing the corners of the different scan zones right here. So what we'll be doing is running this through the scanner, and from these marks we're going to be developing the form that will be used to run our scanner. So here we are in the Sekonic scanning utility. I've launched it, and we're going to be creating a new form. So I click on this option, and it says the usual bits. Make sure everything's plugged in, turned on. Now don't forget, before you can use a scanner, you usually have to install some sort of a driver or another, and that's going to be different from pretty much every one of the scanners you'll be working with. So we're okay. We'll click on this, and we've clicked the button. The sheet gets pulled through, and you can see here we've got the markings on the sheet. The corresponding gray marks were marks that were on our originally marked bubble sheet. We can see that those there, that right there. Now the first thing that we need to do is give this form a title. Let's just call it Demonstration. Secondly, these little X's up here. If you look on this, the original form, you can see these marks. These are the form definition marks, and what they're going to be doing is serving as a check that we're reading the right form when we actually do the scanning for producing data. So these marks correspond to those marks, and when the form is actually scanned, it will be compared, and if these don't match, a message shows up saying, hey, it doesn't look like you're using the correct form definition. If we want to edit these, we can just, you can see it's added the information over here. We can just double click over here, and you can see how the marks we've got are set up over here. If we want to change it, we change it, save it, we'll just cancel. Now, the back and the front are slightly different. Notice that this mark at 14 is gone. That way the system can make sure that the paper is the correct side up. So the next bit is actually defining the rest of the actions. What happens when a sheet is scanned is there's going to be a series of actions here, and each one of those actions will be performed, and the information that was scanned in will be analyzed against the commands in the action list. So if you are creating an Access or an Excel spreadsheet, literals don't really matter that much. That's actual text that gets thrown in to the output stream. If you're creating a text file, those things are put in there, and that's the most instructive. So let's create a literal. I click on New Action. I click on Literal. And the first thing we need to do is give the field a name. Every field must have a unique name. So we're going to call this Literal Last Name. So if we look at that, you can see our last name is going to be our first field here. So we're doing that. And we'll just say $$L name : I use this $$ just sort of as a indicator telling the system that this is a literal, and then the colon says, okay, everything after here is the actual data. And this is just a standard format I've developed that is used by my Examiner software. So we'll save the action, and you can see the name of the action has been saved over here in the literal. Now we've got to create our multiple choice, New Action, multiple choice. we've got to give it a field name. We'll just call it last name. Now, when you're using an Access database as your output, this is the actual field name that will be added to your output record. So we then define it on the screen by using our mouse here. So these are the actual corresponding to this area right here. We then click Preview, and you see we immediately have a problem. This goes A to Z. This is going Z to A. Oh, you look at this and say, oh, horizontal direction, left to right. Well, it should be right to left. Let's preview. Everything looks good. Save the action. And there it's been added. Let's add the first name. New action, literal. Now, you can see that it's saved our previous settings, so we can say lit f name and $f name. Save the action. There it is. New action, multiple choice, and this is going to be first name. It goes from here down to there. Preview it. Now notice that it maintained this right to left, so we don't have to keep re-entering that. That looks good. Save the action. And we just keep repeating that until we've built up the whole sheet. If you want to edit a zone, let's say I want to edit the last name, I can just double click over here in the action table, pulls it up, highlights it, and there we are. Or I can just double click the field, and there we are. Now, you noticed when we were looking at the actions, you had left to right and up to down. Let's look at some of the variations. Oh, let's do one other thing first. Let's save this form. Make sure we don't have any, lose any data if the computer goes down, the power goes out, what have you. So save as, and we actually, I was playing with this earlier, so we'll just use demonstration. It says, hey, that's already there. Yes, we'll replace it, that's fine. There we go. Now, let's create a new multiple choice. This time we'll just make a little block right here. Now here I've got letters A through I. Left to right. See that swaps. And this time we're looking at it by rows. If we said by columns, you can see now it's A, B, C, D is going up and down rather than left to right here. And the spacing can change horizontally, can change vertically. So you can match precisely what you have on that bubble sheet. So we'll set this back to 1. And we'll make this by rows. We have a lot of different varieties of what we can put here. Let's cancel this. And the next thing we want to add, let's say, is, let's go back to our original sheet. We have an ID number down here. So let's do that one. We're going to add new action, literal, lit ID, $ID colon, save it, new action, multiple choice, and let's look here. There it is right there. That must be this bit right here. And this time, type of values, 0, 1, 2, 3. And, we have it by rows. By rows. And it should be right to left. There we go. So we can see that 0 to 9, 0 to 9. So there's our numbers. Now, if we said 1, 2, 3, 4, you can see it leads with a 1 and ends with a 0. So you match exactly what you have on your original bubble sheet. Save that. Oops, I can see I needed to change that to ID. Can't have a duplicate. There it goes. In developing the software, real effort has been made to make sure that data doesn't step on itself. Okay, next thing we have up was this date right here. So we've got a month, day, year. So first thing, new action, literal, lit month, month, new action, multiple choice, month, and we got it right. Let's double check. We have this bump, bump, and then a bump down there. So that's this guy right here. Type of value, months, and in this case we're using the names. January, February, March, April, May, and so on. And we'll save that. And then we have a day and a year. Those are numbers. Now notice here I've got this blank, but I've just said, hey, let's just, we'll imagine there was spaces all the way down here. Just makes it easier to define. So new action, literal, lit day, multiple choice. Oops, didn't get that quite right. There we go. Day. Leading zeros, I believe. Yep. Bump, bump, bump. Preview it. There we go. Save. New action. I'm going to kind of speed through here a bit. Literal year. Year. Multiple choice. Year. Preview. There we are. Save action. And let's just save this just to make sure that's saved. It's a good practice to do that. Now the last bit we're going to play with are the items. You can see they're down here at the bottom. And their orientation, of course, is somewhat different. So we'll add our literal. And we'll say lit item $$IT, new action, multiple choice. We'll call this item. And now we go here, and this is going to be an A, B, C, D. If we preview it, you can see, oh, that's going the wrong direction. So we want to be left to right. So that's A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D, E. And there we go. Now, this is different. These were treated as single entities because the last name, the first name, is a solid field, a data that shows up in our output. Now, in this case, each one of these rows here is a separate entity. So A to the first one, B to the second one, and so on. In this case, treat each element as a unique field. We'll add that little tick mark. So that way, each row here will be a separate data item. We'll save it. And we would just repeat this. So this is going to be item, let's say, B. Get that down there. Bouncy mouse. Preview it. That looks good. Save it, and we just repeat that across. And I always like to use a sort of a fence at the end. And I'll just say literal end $, $, pound, pound. That just says, hey, the data stream is done. We'll save that. It's been saved. Next thing we'll look at is previewing the data. To see how our data looks in a formatted output where we see every possible permutation, what we do is we use this try button up here. So let's click on that. We get the, hey, put up a sheet in the feed bin, and of course you need to make sure your scanner is alive, all the usual things. Click OK. Scanner wakes up. It feeds through here and creates this table showing everything. Now, if I click on OK here, what I can do is specify a demo output so that I can review this later on. But just looking at it right now, what this is actually doing is telling us what's going on as we process this form against what we just scanned. So you can see here's the numbered actions, and see the little parenthesis. Front form definition, it matches. Back form definition doesn't match. We don't care. Literal being processed, so you can see that's number 3. And it shot out last name. Front multiple choice field says here's what the zone is. And the multiple choice was D. Now remember, this thing was being treated as a single field, and the only thing that was marked in here was a D. And by clicking on that, I managed to lose our sample. I may have written the software, but sometimes even I. So we'll click OK. We'll scan this again. There we go. So there was just one letter marked in there, but it treats it as a whole field, and it was also set up to treat blanks, empty mark areas as a blank. You can change that. First name. So it goes through each of it. Now we get something a bit more interesting. Down here, if we look at, here's our, we're getting a processing of the items. The whole zone gave us this. But if you remember, we said treat this, each row as an individual field. So we got each of those fields. So in summary, we come down here. Here's exactly what was scanned. So you can see that whole output line right there. Secondly, if we say, hey, we're going to break this thing down into fields, you can see that's a single field, that's a single field, and then each of those is a single field. Also notice the literals don't get stuck in here. That only shows up as a text. Now, in the output, and this is analogous to what happens with access, we have a field name, last name. It contains a J. First name, Margaret, ID this, month. So you can see how it expanded that out. And now we have individually named fields representing that item. And there's our end of data. So that's what we're getting off of here, is the data coming off that sheet. And really this summarizes. And what you should do is use this information to tune up how you're playing with the front and the back of the form to get exactly what you want here. So let's go back to the front. Remember, we've saved that, so if we want to play with it some more, we can do that. And let's look at some of the other types of fields we can play with. Oh, and by the way, if you notice on the screen here, this is showing what was most recently scanned, and you can see there's our marks. So if we go back to this data, you can see down here we've got DACBA, DACBA. So we're making sure that what we are pulling in is correct. Now, let's look at the other kinds of multiple choices we've got. So we'll click on New Action, Multiple Choice. And we had the A, B, C, D. We looked at that. Okay, leading blank. This is interesting. So let's make a field down here. We'll preview it. So in this case, instead of starting out with an A, it starts out with a blank. So if you didn't have a last name, first name field, and you just had a name field, Jane Doe, so it would be Jane blank Doe, that would be separating it. So from a human factor standpoint, you really want to separate things out. Leading blank with alphas and numbers. This one, here, let me expand this out a bit more. See if I can get this wide enough. Yeah, here we go. So a blank, A through Z, 0 through, and eventually would be 9 because I can't write over this. What this would be used for mainly is addresses. If you're getting someone to bubble in a complete address, so they could go 600 space Marshall, and that would be the address. Okay, we're going to clear that out. We've got months names. We looked at that. Months digits. That's pretty obvious. Custom. Now this one is kind of neat. So we're going to edit the values. And when we edit the values, we get a list right here. So what we are going to do is build, think of the months of the year. That would be January, February, March, and so on. So I could go New, click over here, and say Alpha, Bravo, Charlie. Now if I want to change the order, I can just move those up and down or what have you. So we can save that. And then I could do this. Preview. Alpha, Bravo, Charlie. Alpha, Bravo, Charlie. And what it would do is wouldn't just put ABC, it would put the full string in there. We also, let's cancel that and get out of there. And probably the most interesting one is specified. Again, we edit values. And in this case, if you have a form that's got little bubbles sort of scattered all over the form, what I would do is first we'd name it. We'd say special. And I could click here. And now notice it's made a little mark there and added it. I could say cat. What kind of pet do you own, let's say? Dog. It might be strange. You might own a chicken. So what would happen here is when the person, if the person who was filling out the bubble sheet made a mark in this or this or this, it would output the string cat, dog, chicken. So you can see you've got a very, very powerful way of adding data to the system. And so in the field name special in your access output, it would have cat or dog or chicken and so on. So that's pretty much the way the system is set up to create a new form. So we'll save the form again. We'll exit it. Now, if you've got an existing form you want to work on, you just click Edit Existing Form. It'll say, hey, what form are you using? Demonstration. And there we go. And remember, you can just double-click on a zone. Oops. Got to remember, get out of a zone before you click on another one. And there you are. You can just edit it. You can delete fields over here. If you want to say, for example, process one before the other, I can highlight something. So you can move it up and down. You know, so you've got a lot of power. You could delete elements out of here by using the delete. So that's the development of a form. So that pretty much wraps up this video. The next video in this series will be looking at actually scanning the sheets in a production mode.